Hi, you're watching Saturday in the Woodworking Shop with Andrew Pitts, where we talk things woodworking. One of the pieces I make is a cutting board. Here's a version where I have maple inlaid into cherry, nice crab. Here's a similar cutting board. I call this the wave board, where the maple is in a wave form. And people ask me, how do I finish these? And there's always this concern about food safe. So let me talk to that for a minute. First of all, the finish I use is just the finish I learned from Sam Malouf's book, Sam Malouf Woodworker. And if you go on to page 68, he talks about using a mixture of boiled linseed oil, raw tongue oil, and urethane varnish in 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 quantities, mixed together, rubbed in by hand, makes a nice finish. And then you do another 3 coats of boiled linseed oil, tongue oil, mixed, 50-50, and then you sprinkle in some beeswax, and you end up getting that waxy feel. Can you feel that? It's a nice tactile feel, a little bit of drag on your fingers because of the wax. So the question becomes, is that food safe? Well, I think this food safe concern probably dates back to the pre-1970s, where lead was used as a dryer in finishes. Of course, lead has been banned, and so you won't find lead in your finishes. And in fact, finishes that are allowed to cure fully are food safe. I even checked this out a couple of ways. First of all, Bob Flexner writes a good book on finishing called Understanding Wood Finishing. And on page 76, he talks about the food safe myth. And he basically boils this down to, look, if you go and check the material safety data sheets, the MSDS, on the finishes you use, see if there's any concern about, eating off of that finish. And so I went ahead and I checked it out for linseed oil and for tongue oil and for urethane varnish, and of course beeswax. You eat that when you put a little honeycomb on your toast. And I found there was nothing in there. They say don't drink the stuff, and that's a good thing. Don't go ahead and drink it. But once it's cured, the molecules actually change in these finishes, these curing finishes, and they cross-link and form a different substance than the raw liquid finish, and it won't hurt you. Now, I wouldn't go and try to chip off big pieces of varnish and eat it, anything like that, but as far as putting these thin coats on these cutting boards, not a problem. So to mix this up, like I said, with the linseed oil, tongue oil, and urethane varnish is really easy. I mix it in a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 mix, and you end up getting a nice, it almost looks like the varnish itself, kind of translucent brown oil. I use either, here's a little, here's a little Minwax semi-gloss urethane varnish. Here's a little bit of Ace gloss polyurethane varnish. Doesn't really matter to me. Either of them will work just fine, as will other brands. Now, making the beeswax mixture is a little more complicated. Again, you take some linseed oil, boiled linseed oil. And by the way, the reason you use boiled linseed oil is it's not really boiled, but it has dryers in it, which will help the tongue oil. If you're using raw tongue oil, it will help the tongue oil to cure. So you take the linseed oil and the tongue oil in equal mixtures, put them in in my case, a metal coffee can. Then take a skillet or a double boiler, I use a skillet, fill it with water, turn the temperature to 200 degrees or so. What you're trying to do is warm the can, put the oil in the can, let it warm up. It doesn't have to get hot. You don't really want it hot. You should be able to stick your finger in it, that kind of warmth. And then you take some beeswax. In this case I have shredded beeswax, and you put in a little bit. There's no scientific amount to put in. When I mix up basically a quart of this stuff, I use about 2 scoops. These are 1/8 cup scoops of the shredded beeswax. You could use the block of beeswax and grate some in. The important thing is to not get too much. You'll know it if you get too much, because after it cools, the mixture will become very, very thick. Almost, you know, crusting over kind of thick, and you don't want that. You want a mixture that turns out like this, which is kind of like heavy cream. You know, it drips a little bit, has a nice honey color to it. I'll just show you the differences between just the oil mix here. In my left hand is the oil mixture, and my right hand is the beeswax, and you can kind of see the color, and you can see the oil mixture, you know, is much more liquid, much less viscous. The beeswax mixture is much thicker, doesn't want to slosh around as much. Also, the beeswax gives us a nice golden color. If you look at the tung oil, you know, this is a bottle of tung oil, and it's kind of very dark, a little cloudy. Here's a bottle of boiled linseed oil. Looks kind of like motor oil in color, very clear. You put the beeswax in, it raises the color to even a nicer honey look. Then you take that mixture and let it cool. And then to apply it, you simply rub it on, 1 coat each day for about 3 days, or however much you want, until you get the finish feeling like you want it to feel, and then you're done. Very nice finish, easy to do. Last week I had the opportunity to go down to Columbia, South Carolina for 3 days to James McGrew's woodworking shop to attend Camp Aspire. This is an event where we had about 130 people come all the way from all up and down the East Coast, as far west as Washington and up into Canada, to learn all about using Vectric software and some other CNC related things. Here you can see some shots of James' workshop, which is a really, really large place. There's some of the show and tell that we brought. I did forget to bring my crab box. I wish I had remembered that. But it's a really large place, housed all of us. You can see where we sat there with a computer, laptop computers at the ready, and just try to soak in every bit of what we heard. Now, here's some really interesting full-size chess piece carvings. I don't really know the full story behind them, but they're really magnificent. And there you can get a good shot of the extent of the learning area there. There's James Booth from Vectric over in the UK. Came over, and a really engaging speaker. Boy, I tell you, this guy is passionate about CNC, and I think if we let him, he would have gone all night Friday night and into Saturday without stopping. And the last day, James had a nice barbecue lunch for us. There was always lots of food, but this was really the high point. Great lunch. Everybody enjoyed it, and we all just learned a ton. Well, Jim McGrew hosted a great event with Camp Aspire, and I'm really thankful for him for doing that. Also, it was nice to learn that he and I both served on cruisers in the Mediterranean in the late 70s, so he's a shipmate. I also want to thank the folks from Vectric who came all the way over from the UK to give 2 days of presentation. That's priceless. But no conference is complete without a t-shirt, and a ball cap. See you next time.